Free your mind.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard to yet another very interesting, thought-provoking and insightful episode of the People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid, that sits here at Fairway Hotel every Friday from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. and the repeated version of the same is telecast on NBS television every Saturday from 4 to 5 p.m. On our topical discussion tonight, we'll be delivering into Kenya's finance bill and Ruto administration in the eyes of a Pan-Africanist. In our preamble, the recent finance bill passed in Kenya under the administration of President William Ruto has sparked intense debate and scrutiny among African economic and political analysts. The finance bill in question aims at the following, to list but a few: new levies on essential goods like bread, vegetable oil, and sugar. A 2.5% motor vehicle circulation tax to be paid annually. An eco levy on most manufactured products. Increased existing taxes on financial transactions. Imposing 16% value-added tax on bread. Tax hikes on mobile money transfers. A new annual 2.5 tax on cars. An eco tax on products considered harmful to the environment, for example, packaging, plastics, tires, and many more. Increased cost of items like nappies, sanitary towels, computers, and mobile phones. Also, a 16% VAT on some financial services and foreign exchange transactions. Tax on income from digital marketplaces and digital content. Sons and daughters of Africa, as Pan-Africans, it is our duty to examine the implications of this bill on the African economy, the African people, most especially the people in Kenya, and the continent's quest for economic integration and self-determination. As we explore the opportunities and challenges presented by Kenya's finance bill, we will delve deeper into the bill's provisions, its potential impact on regional trade, economic sovereignty, and the African continental free trade area. We will also further examine the Ruto's administration's commitment to the ideals of Pan-Africanism and, of course, the bill's alignment with our shared vision for a united, prosperous, and self-determined Africa.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
Kenya's financial bill and Ruto administration in the eyes of a Pan-Africanist. Out there in the community, there's already been a lot of discussion about the finance bill, the demonstrations, and also the impact on Ruto's administration. But that is not for us as Pan-Africanists. Ours is to put a Pan-African eye on the demonstration. Right, Honorable Speaker, the demonstrations over the finance bill are not, in the Pan-African eye, a problem of one president, President Ruto. No. The problem in Kenya is not Ruto. The problem is the finance bill. And the finance bill in Kenya that is causing problem is the same like the finance bill in Uganda called the appropriation bill. The only thing is that Kenyans have taken to the streets and the Ugandan youth on their part are still humble. But when you look at the bill presented, it has the problems Africa is facing with the World Bank, with the IMF, with the national debt. So what's the problem in Kenya and what's the problem in Uganda? It is the overburdening national debt of Kenya. The national debt of Kenya has gone over the roof, forcing the nation to make a finance bill That is oppressive. As the World Bank and IMF policies are failing in Africa, the World Bank and IMF are resorting instead to tax the African more. And that is also the same thing happening in Uganda. Our national debt is over and above. The World Bank and IMF are resorting to taxing Ugandans even more. When you look at the problem in the Kenya Finance Bill, there is what they are calling ETIMS, which is the electronic invoicing. And that's the same thing with our IFRIS. Actually, Ugandans demonstrated fast before Kenyans, only that ours was humble and mild. You heard about IFRIS. IFRIS is an electronic invoicing. And our traders closed shop and went to meet the president. That should have been a demonstration. In Kenya, World Bank also pushed down the throat of Kenyans. The same thing, but I think they became afraid to call it IFRIS. They have called it ETIMS. It's the same thing. Now, what is the problem? Right, Honorable Speaker, the national debt in Africa that Africans are said to have borrowed from the World Bank is $655.6 billion. $656.6 billion. And the question the youth of Kenya are asking, how much have you borrowed from the World Bank? Why are we not seeing the results? We only see the taxes going higher and higher. And the questions the demonstrators are asking are generational questions that even in Uganda we should ask. In Kenya, the Ruto administration has borrowed 10 trillion shillings. For 4.5 trillion shillings in just 11 months. In just 11 months, the government borrows 4.5 trillion shillings. Where have they taken the money? The youth are hungry. You saw the youth demonstrating in university gowns. And you saw the youth helping themselves to the breakfast left by the Kenyan MPs. So how does a nation borrow all that money and gets indebted and the youth see nothing? Come to Uganda. We are in every budget we are told money has been borrowed from the World Bank and from the IMF. In billions of dollars. But how can a nation borrow money from the World Bank and the IMF and the roads are still bad? The roads are still not there. There's still no power in the rural areas. There's still a problem with health. There's something wrong with that finance bill. And I want to assure you, Pan-Africanists, that to show you that there is a problem wrong with that finance bill, have you noticed that President Ruto has rejected the bill? At the same time, the Ugandan president has also rejected our appropriation bill, which is the same bill. Right, Honorable Speaker, to me, the rejection of both bills by both East African presidents show that truly we need to examine the problem with a Pan-African eye. It's not a mere coincidence that the president of Kenya has rejected the bill and the president of Uganda has also rejected the bill. So what is happening? What is happening, Right Honorable Speaker, is that from the time of independence, Uganda began to borrow from the Bretton Woods institutions, World Bank, IMF. Kenya began to borrow. All over Africa, they began to borrow. And it's 60 years since independence. Now, the $655 billion is what has been borrowed since independence by Africa. Africa is not able to pay. On the 5th of June, His Holiness the Pope raised the matter. Actually, the Pope predicted the Kenyan demonstrations. Only that people are not aware. On the 5th June, go and do your research. On the 5th June 2024, during a conference on the heavy indebtedness of Africa, the Pope predicted that the poor countries, the youth would become desperate and despair. He was talking about the demonstration. Only 13 days after the Pope spoke, the Kenyan Revolution began on the 18th. Now, the question is, who borrowed the money? The youth of Kenya are asking a question, a generational question. Who has been borrowing this money? On whose behalf? You've seen in Uganda here, every budget, including the budget of 2024, the appropriation bill, which the president has rejected, has got a component. We borrowed too much from USA, from World Bank. Then what did you do with the money? We want to pay back almost half of our budget is to pay back. Pay back to who? By the way, have you ever had the government returning accountability that we repaid this money to the World Bank and we got a receipt? No receipt. And that, to me, that's the real corruption. The real corruption is the one of IMF and World Bank, not even accounting. I've never seen in any financial year where this finance needs are said, we have so far paid this amount of money, and the money has been deposited on account this, and here is the receipt. So, Right Honorable Speaker, sir, the demonstrations in Kenya are going to come here. I want to assure you that if the President of Kenya and the President of Uganda mean Pan-Africanism, this should be the first time that they consult together and see what the youth need in the budget. What do we need in the budget? Number one, the future of the youth. Last week our topic was about raising the youth. There has only been one Pan-African president, Gaddafi. Who knew what to do with the youth? Everyone come from the university, and there is an allocation of money for marriage. For every youth. There's an allocation of money for housing for every youth. And until NATO interfered with Libya, there was never a youth demonstration like that in Kenya. Look at the youth who are demonstrating in Kenya. They are university graduates. They have not settled with wives. They have not married. And people think that is a simple issue. So in the next budget, since Museveni has rejected his appropriation bill and also Ruto, let them include livelihood of youth. And when this budget, the new one, should have it there. And remove the Honorable Kasolos, Honorable Kasaijas, remove them, let the money go to every youth. Two, we must have in this new budget African low housing scheme. In 1962, the independence government of Uganda, in the first independence budget, Right Honorable Speaker, had the bill for low housing. Actually, Nakawa and Naguru, you know those housing estates? They were called African low housing estates. And then in Jinja, what was it called? Warukuba. Not so? In the housing estate in Jinja. Warukuba. Those were low housing. And the budget, which was presented last year by the Minister of Lands, is that, Right Honorable Speaker, the youth of Uganda, the low income and starters, okay, they need 2.4 million housing. And since this NRM government came to power, they have never constructed a single housing unit for the youth. And And that is what the youth are demanding should be included in the Kenyan finance bill. Housing. 95% of these youth who are demonstrating on the streets of Nairobi are youth coming from Kibera slum. Kenya is the fastest growing economy in Africa. How does it have no low-cost housing for the youth? Lubiji has just been destroyed. Why is Lubiji there? Lubiji is there because the youth, the low-cost youth, no houses for them. No houses. 2.4 million houses are required for youth. If, I tell you, if there was youth, if the youth had been catered for in housing, the youth would not go to swamps to sleep in swamps. They are not frogs. The youth know that they are not supposed to sleep in swamps. They know that they are not frogs. And they know it's a wetland. But the question the government must ask is, why are the children, the youth, reducing themselves to sleeping like frogs? Finally, Right Honorable Speaker, what is the solution to the economic woes? Right Honorable Speaker, you remember we got a comment from one of the Pan-Africanists who is in the diaspora, Ayo Kimathi. Ayo Kimathi said that the East African economies have got three problems. One, the international companies targeting East Africa are not paying taxes. They come here, they are seeking tax exemption. And when they seek tax exemption, then government finds a way of letting the local company pay. So number one, Right Honorable Speaker, there should be no tax exemption by any company. Let every company pay tax. The second one is the point you have said, you have hinted to what is the solution. Involve the youth in budgeting. Every member of parliament, according to the constitution, is a representative of the people. I've never had parliament adjourning a session and saying that we are sending the MPs back to their constituencies to show them the budget before we pass it. Have you ever heard it? But the parliament always sends MPs to go back and consult when they want to remove age limit, when they want to remove term limit. From today on, before they pass even the next budget, which the president has returned, let every MP go back to the constituency and show the thing they want to pass. They no longer have the final authority. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker, for giving me the moment.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your Speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
In the 2022 to 2023 fiscal period, the Kenyan government raised 17.7 billion US dollars. And in the 2023-2024 fiscal year, they expect it to increase slightly. So if you contrast two sides, a debt of 82 billion United States dollars and gross government income of 17%. So you will see that it will take the Kenyan government over 10 years, probably decades, to repay this debt. And if maybe out of their budget allocation, they are allocating probably maybe less than 50%, it will take them longer. And if you look at the trends, the same applies to Uganda. Every year, the debt accumulates. So even they keep borrowing. So sometimes we call it boom and bust, it's like a balloon. They keep blowing it. So, like the previous speaker hinted in the biblical words, so when you borrow, you become a slave. And probably with this borrowing causing us problems, we are seeing vestiges of neocolonialism. And like Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the great Pan-African, foretold, neocolonialism is the last stage of imperialism. So with those statistics of dates, it's not surprising that the Kenyan government, Mr. Speaker, is trying to, recoup, to find other ways of raising money. And it has turned to its citizens, the wananchi, to squeeze them, so that they can raise more money. But is that approach sustainable? Okay, the approach whereby they have set up now the Finance Bill 2024. So, as Pan-Africans, we don't think it's sustainable. So if you look at also statistics, more wealth actually leaves the African continent than it enters every year. And this wealth goes to neo-colonialists. And Africa, we are losing collectively over 40 billion United States dollars. And this is according to a research which challenges misleading conceptions about foreign aid. Sorry? Yeah, Africa, we are losing around 40 billion United States dollars. This is according to a research that challenges the misleading conceptions of foreign aid. So, Mr. Speaker, you reckon, like Dr. Kwame Nkrumah foretold, neocolonialism being the last stage of imperialism. So, Kenya's finance bill has all the connotations of this problem we are facing as Pan-Africans. And it's not Kenya in isolation. Other countries, Uganda inclusive, like the previous speakers hinted, is affected. So, if you look at Kenya as a small entity or Africa at large, we get some small drop in the ocean in form of grants and aid. And if you are to contrast it with the money we are losing, what we are losing as Kenya or as Africa as a whole is quite a lot, Mr. Speaker. We are losing money in form of illegal extraction of resources, which resources could have helped the Kenyan Gen Z or the African Gen Z and the African youth at large. We are losing money in tax avoidance as Africans. We are losing money as interest in servicing these debts which we owe to the IMF and the World Bank. So just to give you some figures, Africa receives on average around 30 billion United States dollars in overseas aid annually. But what we lose as Kenya or as Africa at large is over 192 billion United States dollars every year. And how is this money being siphoned? We are losing around 21 billion United States dollars as debt repayments, Mr. Speaker. We are losing around 46.3 billion United States dollars as profits made by multinational companies which have got tax holidays. They don't want to pay taxes. We are losing around over 17 billion in illegal logging of timber, which proceeds could have helped these Gen Zs, these African youth. We are losing over 35 billion United States dollars in tax evasion, and also over 6 billion US dollars as brain drain. We are losing doctors. So all these doctors which are exported out of Africa and nurses, that's a big loss to us. And Mr. Speaker, if you are to look back in the last 50 years, collectively, as the African continent, we've lost over 1 trillion in illicit financial outflows. So this is a great figure which could have helped if it was retained here to support the aspirations of our young people. So there is a great African. His name is Dambisa Moyo. Dambisa wrote a book. He titled it Debt Aid. Why aid is not working and how is another way for Africa. So we as young people or the Gen Zs, we need to find what would work for Africa. Because what's happening in Kenya with the riots is not isolated. So this is a problem which is experienced by young people, Gen Zs and youth in other parts of Africa. Probably, maybe the Kenyans are more politically conscious than youth elsewhere. So, looking at Kenya, it has made some significant progress in solving their problems. So there is what we call the AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area. So you look at in October 2022, Kenya actually exported its first locally made car batteries and tea to Ghana under the African Continental Free Trade Area. So these are some of the solutions which need to be addressed to solve this problem. So we need to see Kenya increasing outflows and doing more intra-African trade so that its young people can get access to opportunities in jobs and things so that they can improve their livelihood. And this should be the same for other African countries too. So if you look at the the African Continental Free Trade Area, is the largest trade body in the whole world after the World Trade Organization. And it has got over 43 parties with other 11 signatories. So we've also seen that the African Union is doing some other things as Pan-Africans to address this problem of young people, whereby they have set in motion a protocol on the establishment of the African Monetary Fund. So this is very key. So instead of us borrowing from the IMF and the World Bank, as Pan-Africanists, we would rather borrow from the African Monetary Fund so that we keep the money within. Even the debts will be within Africa, so we use it to improve our situation. So there is a book I like. It's titled Powernomics, The National Plan to Empower Black America. This book was written by Dr. Claude Anderson. And in it, there are so many good lessons that Kenya or other African countries at large can use, or even us as Pan-Africanists. In this book titled Powernomics, Dr. Claude says we need to find strategies to change the way we think, behave, and also rest. So I'll give you an example. If you look at these Kenya Gen Zs who are revolting, who are youth from elsewhere in Africa, sometimes I think we shoot ourselves in the foot, about mindset. So every time we buy goods which have been produced off the African continent, then we are also like, the corrupt politicians, we are aiding in this outflow of resources from Africa. So most of you, young people, like even us, our age, we like driving, say, cars from Europe or Germany, like Mercedes-Benz and BMW. You're contributing to the outflow of resources. How about young people, the Gen Zs, and elsewhere in Africa, change the mindsets whereby you drive African-made cars. Then the companies in Africa, and then you keep the money in Africa, profits in Africa. I'll give you an example. Kenya, which is our focus today, makes cars. There is a brand called Mobius. This is a Kenyan car brand. It's made in Kenya. So we need to change the minds of the Gen Zs to drive Kenyan-made cars. Then you have jobs created in Kenya, profits retained in Kenya, and then improve of livelihood of Kenyans. So what we've seen in Kenya with the Gen Zs, this has been a grassroots revolution. Like the previous speaker said, probably this is going to be a revolution to feed the rest of Africa. So we've had a grassroots, so policies is up, but process is down. So how about if the rest of us Pan-Africans, continue this momentum which has been started by the Kenyan Gen Zs to change mindsets and also to start taking action. For example, the AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area, make sure you try to reduce your consumption of goods which are not made from Africa, because then we are causing ourselves a disservice. I was giving you examples of car brands which are made in Africa. We've got Katanga. They're making cars in Ghana under this Katanga brand. And also Innocent from Nigeria. So as I conclude this submission, I'll leave you with a quote by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. So, divided we are weak. United Africa could become one of the greatest forces for good of the world. But this cannot be achieved until when we change mindsets and probably we build on this momentum which is taking place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Irumba Katusabe.
Mr. Chair, I want to tell you that in analyzing the events that are taking place in Kenya, and more specifically on the violent anti-tax demonstrations that happened in Kenya, more specifically on the finance bill, we need to be extremely very objective in this matter. Mr. Chair, in July 2023, demonstrations against the finance bill were called by the opposition Raila Odinga's Azimio Party, and the basis was specifically to rally the members of the Kenya community to demonstrate against the bill as a party, as Azimio Party. Now, this time around, in 2024, Raila Odinga came in the disguise of a party, but using the civil society organizations, labor groups, the lawyers associations, and the student groups to cause anti-tax demonstrations. So to someone who is able to cognitively digest the economic issues in Kenya, you could really know that it is simply politics at hand. It's not the finance bill, because the finance bill happened even before. I've said in 2023. And this is the man who mobilized already different groups to do that. Now, this time, Mr. Chair, His Excellency Dr. Ruto has been in power, I think, 11 months, if I'm not mistaken. Now, 11 months, I can equate it like constructing a house. If you are constructing a house, a storage building like this one, it takes years, 5 years, some 10 years, but 11 months is too early for someone to show results within 11 months. Mr. Chair, the finance bill was meant to raise or introduce taxes or fees on a range of daily items and services like internet, data, fuel, bank transfers, or on essential goods like bread and other goods. Now, in this proposal, the 2024/2025 finance bill that Kenya took part was mainly to raise US dollars 2.7 billion in additional taxes to reduce the budget deficit and borrowing. Mr. Chair, it is common knowledge that Kenya's public debt, as we talk now, stands at 68% of the gross domestic product, which is higher than the 55% of the gross domestic product recommended by World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Now, it means that if you are to undertake borrowing in the IMF or World Bank, you should not exceed 55%. And now, for Kenya's matter, it's beyond 55. It is 68%. So, by all means, Ruto has been caught in competing demands of lenders and at the same time the depressing appropriation. Because the lenders are urging government to cut deficits in obtaining the funding. But again, the population are putting him on the wall. Mr. Chair, I just wanted, in relation to that, because the professor was giving us about was making an equivalent of appropriation bill in Uganda, as well as finance bill in Kenya. But maybe to put just facts right, Mr. Chair, Uganda last had the finance bill of Uganda. That is 2023. It's now an act. Was introduced specifically to deal with withholding tax, specifically on properties or sale of properties or assets within Uganda. Now, the finance bill of Kenya and the finance bill of Uganda may have something similar, but it is not appropriation, because appropriation bill does not deal with taxes. Appropriation bill simply contains the amount of money to be spent by each government ministry, department, or local government, and authorizing the money, authorization of that money from the consolidated fund. So this one is typically to look at the expenditure of the money. It doesn't deal with the taxes. With the financial bill, the bill deals with the proposals of government to levy new taxes, modification of the existing tax, or probably continuation of the existing tax structure. So it deals with the financial bill, it deals with the taxes, but with appropriation, how do you spend the money, for instance, in the consolidated fund? And that is what the president refused. So, Mr. Chair, the young people in Kenya are simply disturbing my fellow hustler, President Ruto, for nothing. Because this is the economics at play. Mr. Chair, when the finance bill is introduced, more tax base will induce high investment opportunities, and high investment opportunities will create jobs for these young people. Now, we are looking this in Pan-Africanism eye, with the eye of Pan-Africanism. Because what are the ideals of Pan-Africanism? Unity, self-determination, I think something like that. Mr. Chair, there is nothing like probably looking in the issue of the poor or demeaning them. But what this is economics, as I told you. Because when we look at the finance bill, any country in any continent must have what we call the finance bill, which turns into finance act. The components of the bill, specific, a country cannot develop without taxes, first of all. You can't develop without taxes. And the tax base of a country determines the investment opportunities of that country. And when investment opportunities are created, it means better jobs for the community, for the people, high living standards for their people, high housing, and whatever. So we are totally looking at what are the inducements that the taxes can bring on board. Mr. Chair, I want to tell you that the hustler was forced to withdraw the bill, owing to the pressure from the protesters who had argued that the measure would choke the economy and raise the cost of living for their people, already struggling to meet their aims. Now, proposed tax measures that triggered a week of protests. Some of them, you gave them, Mr. Chair, include new levies on basic commodities such as bread, vegetables, vegetable oil, fuel, and so many others. Mr. Chair, these tax measures were necessary to fund development programs and cut public debt. Now, His Excellency, Mr. Ruto, further directed that he is going to withdraw. He has withdrawn the bill, but he is going to make, now withdrawing the bill doesn't mean that it's totally out from the shelves. They are trying to make some bit of changes where they can see possible areas to cut, and that's why he actually mentioned that he's going to start with the presidency.
In this regard as well, I am directing for immediate further austerity measures to reduce expenditure, starting with the Office of the President, the entire presidency, and extending to the entire executive arm of government. Operational expenditure in the presidency be reduced to remove allocations for the confidential fort, reduce travel, hospitality, purchase of motor vehicles, renovations, and other expenditures. This will cover the entire presidency and also the executive arm of government.
So the executive and the entire operational expenditure under the presidency, they are going to be reduced. Now, Mr. Chair,
Comrade,
as I conclude,
yes,
we are now looking at the Hustlers administration in the perspective of the Pan-African. Ruto's administration in Pan-African eye has worked very hard and consistently, leading to the reduction of prices of essential commodities such as the unga, posho, for us we call it posho, unga, from Kenya shillings 240 to now Kenya shillings 100. I think that it is something that depicts unity. Then fertilizer costs from Kenya shillings 7,000 to Kenya shillings 2,500 as we talk now. The shilling has also strengthened the dollar. Now every Kenya shilling, 100 Kenya shillings that the government collects in taxes, Kenya shillings 61 goes into paying debts. I've told you the debt, whatever, is extremely very big. Now, Ruto's administration saw Kenya pay $2 billion US, that is equivalent of Kenya shillings 260 billion debt that was borrowed in 2014. Now, you can see now a government which has been in power for 11 months, now is paying a debt of 2014.
I think
and then, and now you are rising up to disturb the hustle. I think it is not possible. Yeah. Now, Ruto's government has also made a significant progress in pulling the nation back from the brink of debt distress. The debt situation, as you know, was being better managed and making the budget space to create more investment programs for their youth. Now, Ruto's administration also has put Kenya's gross domestic product by 5.6% in 2023, making Kenya the 27th fastest growing economy in the world, which has never happened even in Uganda is not in the rate of Kenya. So why can't you give His Excellency the hustler to do wonders? Because now, as I told you, politics has overshadowed the whole economic progress in Kenya. It is not simply the finance bill, but politicians, those who lost. You remember Raila Odinga stood with the hustler, and the hustler picked him up, even with the legs up. But now, he's now trying to mobilize the younger people. Please,
Thank you, comrade. Thank you so much for your submission.
Mr. Sakwa mentioned Azimio and the hustler. It is the actual problem we have. Thank you very much, sir. See, we are putting everything to politics. Allow me to differ with you. The Kenyans actually have a point. They have real pain. It is not political. A sanitary towel has been levied. Me, I stay in Kidel. How is it political for me to go and speak, to shout if they cannot listen to me? After all, when they were passing these bills, they did not consult us. See, they sit in their parliament, their SCs, the numbers, is it right? But who is going to subject to the numbers? It is not a political issue. It is not Azimio. No. It is we are paying this money. See, you may find that, you see, like here in Uganda, the political elite have a card of fuel, they have health insurance, they have, most of their needs are catered for. Who is catering for them? Me. How are we going to get that money? I pay more on sugar. They pay the taxes, I will pay more on sugar, I'll pay more on fuel, on kerosene, on a pad, on a pamper. Like seriously, how do you expect bagamba abaganda batalogamba enyindo oginyigiriza nyindo evamu omusaayi? So these kids have been pushed to the wall. There is no other way. How better should I say? If I'm one person, I go and stand at the Constitutional Square. Will my voice be really hard? Question is, hadn't they gone this wild, if we may call the term wild, hadn't they become a political threat, a security threat, would the president actually retreat this bill? Because yes, politics aside, we are still human beings. And it is us who buy chukumi who pay more on these things. It is not political, sir. I may differ with you on that matter. Let me conclude. Most of the times I've been watching the Kenyan riots since they began. I've had one simple question. Who gains in this whole exercise? How does the state gain? How does the state stand to lose? This is what I think. Right now, Kenya has been a fair democracy since 2007. I'm saying since 2007 because 2007 displayed something we didn't expect in Kenya, with lots of people dying to political divisions. Should I say divisions? Let me say ethnic divisions to political dressings. Today, Kenya is somehow an exemplary democracy. The president summoned the editors of all publications in Kenya. He mentioned to them that if the deputy president feels it so hard, let him resign. So if the president, by the time he does not have the audacity to call his deputy, but he has to communicate by proxy, it is now a problem bigger than actually people being on the street. Because if you divide the leadership of the country, you've successfully brought the country down. Now, what are you going to treat? Do we treat the others on the street? Do we treat the political elite leadership of the country? Okay, the bill has been retracted, but it is coming back. It is just going to be reclosed better, given better English and brought back. Question is, where does it place Kenya? Do we have, who stands to gain? Let me just do a scenario. Today, as we conclude on that, yes. How does a wananchi strike go into the parliamentary building, get hold of the mess, guide me? Yeah, you've been in security for some time. Is it possible? How dare? Like, how did they go into the parliament? How do they get to the mess? How? So to me, this is what I'm looking at. Help of the security. Which means successfully, the Kenyan democracy is done. And finally, I'm looking at, you mentioned this term, we trace the money. Kenya has to now procure more armory. It is a business. So, just to conclude on your question, when I look at the democracy in Kenya, that one is done. The youth are losing more. The state, by definition of the state is done. So what are we looking at next in Kenya? I'm not a political scientist, but I'm looking at something more of, I don't want to say dictatorial government. I'm looking at something more composite that is void of anything to do with democracy. I beg.
Sabe.
If you look at this bill, I won't waste a lot of time. I'll go straight to the point. If you look at President Ruto, one of the comrades here, that was Mr. Sokwa, spoke about consolidated fund. And when he spoke about consolidated fund, I was seated there, I was like, that's not the point. For me, my issue was, if you talk about consolidated fund, of course, with the looting and the embezzlement which is involved among the African leaders, and you speak of consolidated fund, of which it is not there. Even if you ask for the consolidated fund, you will not find it among ministries. No wonder it's in Kenya or Uganda, you won't find it. No. I'm assuring you, Mr. Sakwa, that consolidated fund, these people are too corrupt, there's no transparency. Of which even they talk about the consolidated funds. So what should we do as the youth? And we shall ask, what is the consolidated fund for? Which is there? You get it? Of which it was not put to its proper use or allocation. Okay, the next point was, if we speak about tax exemption, Professor Lenny was talking about tax exemption, and he was like, most of the international companies here in East Africa, more so Kenya and Uganda, they are limited to taxes or they are exempted from taxes. I really don't know. Because what I know, based on my knowledge, most of these companies, they are what? They are supposed or they are made to pay the tax. How comes that you uttered out that statement? Maybe by statistics or by bringing out the facts. I want you to elaborate on that. And lastly, President Ruto, talking about or adjusting, he brought up about the financial bill to adjust the supplementary budget expenditure to critical services. The critical services he is talking about services like health sector and the transport sector, among others. Yet this is the same very person going to have this in USA with Joe Biden. How much is that? What kind of amount is that? For him to go and have this for, maybe let me talk about this to President Joe Biden to enhance economic prosperity, cooperation and trade values to us the youth. So if you are talking about bringing financial bill and signing on it, maybe in Kenya, the Kenyan youth are educated, my friend. They are very educated, they have gone to universities, so they analyze all the issues. So the point is, that financial bill that was brought in Kenya, and the youth themselves, to best of my knowledge, I think they did the right way. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
Now, depending on what my colleagues have said, two questions get into my head. One, why excessive debt? Two, why excessive taxation? That is the problem of Africa. In Africa, we have excessive debt. At the same time, we have excessive taxation. Now, when you look at the taxation system in Africa, there is a lot of taxes. There are high taxes. African leaders are intoxicated with taxation. They think that maybe it is only taxation is the only source of revenue. They don't look at other potentials. Africa has many untapped potentials. We have the raw materials, we have our favorable climate, but the African leaders, they only look at the taxation. Yes, we agree that taxes are sources of revenue, but we again agree that excessive taxes, it is a tool of impoverishing the population. So therefore, the Kenya Finance Bill, I don't see it in a way that it is going to help boom the economy. It is a tool to impoverish the population. That's why even when they were demonstrating, they were saying, don't tax our dreams, don't tax our dreams. It is because they are looking at this bill as one of the tools which is going to impoverish them. Secondly, why excessive debt? Africa has got an excessive debt. One of the problems, I think, is the problem of leadership. Causes of debts in Africa, one, we have corruption, we have extravagance. I will use an example of a country called Zambia. I watched a certain TikTok video where Zambia was hosting an African event. It went in the International Monetary Fund to borrow money just to buy vehicles for the guests to arrive. Now, these people are coming in for just 2 days. You are going to borrow funds to buy vehicles to transport these people. You have failed to live within your means. The next time you have a debt to pay, when these people whom you bought the vehicles for are not even helping you to pay. So, in conclusion, the African leaders should benchmark from the past Pan-Africanists. So, in conclusion, the Kenya's bill, it is just a tool of impoverishing the Kenyans, and thanks to the Kenyans who have rejected it.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
As we stand in solidarity with the people of Kenya, we recognize the need for inclusive and sustainable economic growth that benefits all the citizens of Kenya. We continue to urge policymakers to engage in constructive dialogue, consider diverse perspectives, and prioritize the well-being of the Kenyan people. Together, let us continue to work towards a united, prosperous, and self-determined Africa. Tunawashika mkono na kuwakilisha watu wa Kenya katika kipindi hiki cha mgumu. Tunajua kwamba uchumi wa Kenya unahitaji kuwa na ustawi wa kutumika na wote na si wa kuwakilisha maslahi ya wachache. Tunawasihi watawala kushirikiana na kuangalia mbele ya watu wa Kenya. Pamoja tunaweza kufanya Afrika moja, imara na uhuru. We as the Pan-African Pyramid stand and support the people of Kenya during this difficult time. We know that the Kenyan economy needs to be inclusive and to benefit all, not just serve the interests of a few. We urge leaders to work together and prioritize the well-being of the Kenyan people, because we believe that together we can make an Africa that is united, strong and free. And very lastly, tunatoa pole kwa familia zote ambazo zimepoteza wanachama wao. Tunajulisha pia na kusikitisha kwa wale ambao mali zao zimeharibiwa. Tunawashika mkono na kuwakilisha watu wa Kenya wakati huu ngumu. Amani, haki na hekima zinawindi. Asante. You have been a very amazing audience, both the physical and the online. Thank you very much for always joining us here at Pharaoh Hotel for the People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid that sits here every Friday. Entrance is totally free from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. A kind reminder, we'll have our Pan-African Pyramid Global Awards on the 31st of August. Come, let's rekindle our roots. Come, let's recognize Africans that have selflessly contributed to the various sectors of the economy, agriculture, education, environmentalism, nation it, but so forth. You have been a very amazing audience. Till next time, see you.
Join us on the 7th Pan-African Pyramid Global Awards 2024 and 10th Anniversary Bonfire Dinner. recognizing and awarding Pan-Africanists who selflessly fought and defended the rights and freedoms of the black race globally. On 31st August 2024 at Fairway Hotel from 3 p.m. Dress code, strictly traditional or African wear. Theme, Pan-Africanism plus environmentalism equals to humanism. Book your dinner card now. Table for 6, 3 million. Platinum, 1 million. Gold, 500K. Silver, 400K. Bronze, 150K. Come, let's rekindle our roots. Call 0757 342 317 or 0782 342 317 to book your ticket now. Africa, don't agonize, organize. Powered by Fairway Hotel, NBS TV, Grow Foundation, The Spy Uganda, Detective UG.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.